have a quorum at a future time in the meeting, then we can then approve those minutes later in the meeting. So I wanted to introduce Councilwoman LaNae Millet, who's here, who's joining us. She is taking on the new responsibility of the council liaison for this commission, Public Works Advisory Commission. Brent Summer was doing that in the past. He's done a fine job, and we appreciate his support over the last little while that he's been involved. And so, LaNae, can we turn some time to you to give an introduction?
Sure. I guess I'm not sure what you want me to introduce, but
well, I don't know. She's been my neighbor since 1999 when I moved in the neighborhood, so I know her quite well. But she just got on the city council here in January.
Yeah, lived in Orem for over 30 years. I grew up in the Heber Valley in Midway. As far as from a water perspective, I lived through the Jordanelle Dam being built, and I understand a bunch of farmers up in Midway understand the importance of water and what you guys do here. So I appreciate your service, and you make some pretty important decisions so the rest of us can just live our lives with our water at our tap and our indoor plumbing. So thanks so much for everything you guys do.
Thank you. I did want to also comment on the commission. We have 2 vacancies officially right now. There are 5. We have 2 in attendance today, and we hope to have at least 2 others or possibly 3 others join us, but I think we'll go ahead and start. LaNae and I have been reviewing the applications. We've received, I don't know, maybe 8 or so applications for the Public Works Advisory Commission. And so we hope to have this completely staffed and filled for our next meeting. This will set the stage for probably the next 2 or 3 meetings we'll have as a Public Works Advisory Commission, the topics that we're going to discuss today, which we feel very strongly about. And Giles and Reed and I were in attendance at a workshop last week in St. George at the WEAU conference. That stands for Water Environment Association of Utah. And they speak to the 2 different topics of wastewater treatment, and also stormwater. There's not, the emphasis is truly on wastewater, but there is a stormwater component to that as well. I wanted to introduce Giles Demke, who will be making the presentation today. And I think throughout the presentation, he would encourage you to ask any questions you might have as we present, and then he and Reed or I can answer some of those questions, but primarily it'll be Giles who will be presenting. I wanted to recognize everyone else who's here. We have Rick Sabey, who's our new stormwater section manager. We have Cody Steggell, our streets section manager. Jim Orr is our park section manager. Thayne Carter is our fleet section manager. We have Reed Price, who is been here for 7 or 8 years now as the maintenance division manager, but now I'm introducing him as my new assistant public works director. Reed was recently promoted into that position. That position has had the new responsibility of all things water resources, which include our water section, water reclamation section, and our newly created stormwater section, which Rick is in charge of. And so when I recognize that, Neil Winterton was on this committee or had been a part of this group, but he has recently accepted a position with Pleasant Grove City as their new public works director. And so we wish him well in his new ventures there. Devin Rich, our committee chair, has just joined. Devin, can you hear us all right? We couldn't hear you. We can't hear you, Devin. I think we'll just go ahead then and start with our presentation, and I'll turn the time over to Giles Demke.
Good morning. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of the projects and things that are happening down at Water Rack. I'm going to go ahead and share a presentation. To start off, I want to give a little history about Orem, the Orem Water Reclamation Facility. It was first built and came online in 1958. We're still using some of the tanks from the 1958 project. It was last updated in 2011 when we brought our BNR3 tank online to do biological control of nitrogen and phosphorus. The facility is designed for a flow of 13.5 million gallons per day. Currently, we're running between 8 and 8.5 million gallons per day. First thing I'd like to talk about is our biosolids upgrade project. In 1999, we constructed the building that you see before you. This is the biosolids building. The equipment was installed at that time. It consists of 2 Ashcroft dewatering belt presses. These presses separate the solids from the liquid in our solids processing stream. Currently, we operate those presses 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. They've got about 46,000 hours of runtime on each press. Industry standards for this piece of equipment is between 20 and 30,000 hours. This kind of shows the kind of maintenance that we do down here. We're double the runtime on these machines. Again, we've had comments from engineers that have come in to look at them. They've complimented us on how well that these machines are taken care of. Just so you're aware, those machines have processed 18.5 million gallons of sludge, and a total of 23,000 tons of solids have gone through those machines since they've been installed. It's time that we take a look at those and replace them. We went out for an RFP to select an engineer to help us do the design to install some owner purchased equipment that we're going to be purchasing for this. We had 5 firms that responded to our RFP. Hazen and Sawyer was the low bid on this. Their project fee came in at just under $60,000. They have 6 tasks that we've asked them to do. They're going to be looking at our process numbers to make sure that the equipment that we're putting in is sized appropriately. After that, they will design how this machine is going to fit into the building. We've got some major structural modifications to do to fit it in there and get the machine into the building. They will be preparing drawings and specifications for bidding so we can have a contractor assist us in putting these things in. And then there's task 5. Again, we put in some money so that we can coordinate with Department of Water Quality to make sure that we're in compliance with any regulatory issues that may come up. Right now, we're scheduled to have this ready to bid by October of 2022. The first meeting is scheduled for next week for our kickoff meeting. So we're excited to get going on this.
Giles, can I ask a question then?
Please.
How many bidders did we have for the design for this project?
We had 5 that bid, ranging from Hazen that came in at $60,000. We had 1 engineer that came in at almost $200,000. And looking at their bids, the one that was really high came in with a lot of hours that we just didn't feel was appropriate for the project. Hazen Sawyer is new to Utah. The engineer that we have working with us is Perry Osborne. He has worked with Orem before. We were very comfortable with him, and Hazen Sawyer is nationally recognized for doing this type of work. Staff down here has gone to great lengths to figure out what type of equipment we want to put back in. What you see before you is called a screw press. The manufacturer is FKC. They're headquartered up in Washington, just outside of Spokane, I believe. We have visited their headquarters. We've looked at their equipment. We took a group of us to look at installation of these screw presses. We visited 3 facilities up in the Washington area. The one that's down there in the bottom corner is actually one of the screw presses that we saw in operation. Very, very good reviews from the facilities and the operators running these. Not a lot of maintenance on them. They spin very, very slowly. If you look at the little diagram to the left, that shows how these works. You have a head box where the sludge, the liquid sludge drops in, and then there's a screw auger in these that slowly spins and moves the sludge to the discharge end of the machines. In doing so, it squeezes the water out of it. We can get solids or percent solids out of these machines, 17, 18. Our pilot tests, we saw as high as 22% of dewatered cake coming out of the machines. In comparison, the belt presses currently in operation here, we're getting between 13 and 15% total solids. If we can get up into the 18% range, which is doable with these machines, I can process an additional 250,000 pounds of solids in these machines versus the belt presses.
Giles,
Yes.
my wife makes really nice cake. She made a bundt cake on Sunday. It was really good. Can you tell us what are you talking about here regarding this dewatered cake?
This is the processed biosolids. It's actually the bugs that have done all the work out here at our facility once we've removed the water. It looks like when it's in the 17 to 18% range, it looks like kind of dry clay. Once it dries out into about the 95, it looks like topsoil. So these are all of the organisms that we use to remove the pollution from the water. We have to dry them, otherwise we're hauling water. Water is very heavy and it's very expensive to move water around. So without these machines, the cost to our customers goes way up because we're moving water, and we do not want to move water around.
Giles, Casey Shaw, I'm just wondering if any polymers or other chemical treatments are necessary for the screw presses.
Screw presses do require polymer. In our pilot testing, we saw a 1 to 2% reduction in the amount of polymer needed to hit these higher percentage rates. So it will be a polymer savings for us. I think everybody's aware the cost of everything is going up. We're seeing 20, 30% price increases in polymer and or other chemical costs. So any savings that we can get with these machines will help us in the long run. We've done a preliminary layout. The drawing in front of you shows the location of the 2 screw presses or the 2 belt presses that are currently installed. The red screw press is the location for the first one that we'll be putting in. The picture up in the right-hand corner shows the belt presses. Where that walkway and platform is the location for the new screw press. The building was actually designed for a 3rd belt press. We can put in another belt press, but looking at this screw press technology, we get much better performance in the dry cake out of them. So that's why we're headed down the screw press route rather than another belt press. When all is said and done, it's the intent to take out those 2 belt presses and install 4 more screw presses. That gives us a configuration of one press in standby in case we have something that fails. And this should take us out through build out with our current master plans. So we would have a total of 5 screw presses in the building. Again, we're looking at doing this as soon as we can make funding available. Any questions on our biosolids project?
Giles, how many screw presses would we need for current demand? Any guess on that?
The intent is right now we'll put in the first screw press, which will allow us to run 1 screw press and 1 belt press. I have to have 1 belt press, 1 screw press in order to meet current demand. That frees up the space to pull out 1 of the belt presses and put in 2 more screw presses. Once we have those 3 installed, that frees up the bay of the last belt press to put in the remaining 2 screw presses.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Welcome. If there's not, go ahead.
Yeah, so we've talked about 2 different types of dewatering processes. One is a belt press, one is a screw press. There are other types of dewatering technologies. One is kind of a thermal or using heat. They have dryers that will help take water out. They're very expensive and require a lot of maintenance. I've seen one where it's basically in a garden. What should I say? It's like a, what's the one in Tooele, Giles? The one that has.
That is a greenhouse. It's a thermal.
Yeah, it's like a greenhouse, and they process their sludge through the greenhouse, and it's a dryer of sorts. It dries the sludge as well through solar energy. So this one, though, Giles, in your opinion, is probably the most efficient and cost-effective solution for the city.
That's correct. They are also, I had a conversation down in St. George with the local vendor that supplies these because they are so efficient and they don't use a lot of power. That unit that we looked at here, I think, has a 2 horsepower motor on it. In comparison, our belt presses have 2 5 horsepower motors plus 2 more motors to run the hydraulic systems. In speaking with the local rep, WattSmart considers these very energy efficient, and they may even be able to kick in some funds on these machines because they do meet some of the criteria for the WattSmart program.
Good.
There's not any other questions. We'll drop into the next project we're playing with down here. This is our capital improvement plan. Everybody's aware that we have done a capital master plan for the collection system, and the water rec plant is included in that, but it's not detailed. So we thought it's prudent to do a complete plan for the facility for at least a 10-year outlay for the treatment plant. Again, if you remember, we're still using tanks from 1957. Some of the equipment out here is reaching end of life, and we need to start looking at how we're going to put in a plan to replace this equipment and keep us in operation. Our 10-year plan will look at a list of recommended projects that we need to be looking at, a schedule for completing these projects, what it's going to cost, and possible funding mechanisms. The engineer that we have working for us on this is Waterworks Engineers. We've worked with them before on our reuse project. They're very, very familiar with doing these type of programs. They have a 7 task item, with task number 8 being their project management. Task 1, they need to look at the existing information that we have, compile it, and look for any gaps. That has been completed. Task 2, model and evaluate our treatment processes, including areas for advanced nutrient removal. Again, right now we do have to remove phosphorus. We're anticipating having to remove nitrogen. We already have an ammonia limit on the facility, so we need to be very aware of what these new regulations are going to be doing to the facility. Big part of this is a condition assessment of the existing facility. I'll talk about that in just a little bit. One of the big things for our neighbors out here is odor control. We want to make sure that we're a good neighbor. In tying in with what we just talked about with the biosolids, we want to look to make sure that we're on the right track for biosolids. There are some new things happening at the federal level. I think everybody's probably heard of PFAS and PFOS. We're going to be keeping a close eye on those. If they start showing up in biosolids, we may have to switch gears a little bit on how we dispose of our biosolids.
Giles, why don't you give a quick little piece, let them know what PFAS and PFOS is in 30
I was afraid you were going to ask for that because I can't pronounce it.
You don't need to say the name, just
what they are they're called forever chemicals. Once they get into the water stream or into the environment, they're almost impossible to get rid of. They stay around forever. Very prevalent in firefighting foam, Teflon, these type of things. As of right now, looking at the data that's coming from Waterworks, Orem does not have any industry that uses a PFAS or PFOS. So we're keeping our fingers crossed in hoping that it's not in our water streams. There's a lot of places around the U.S. now that are having problems with PFAS and PFOS. If it gets into the drinking water, into the aquifers, it can pollute them to the point where you can't use them anymore. So right now it's a big discussion. There are regulations that looks like they're coming from the federal level. We're keeping a close eye on that. Again, it's just a set of chemicals that we can't treat for. There's very few treatment options available to treat for these. And the ones that are available, they're not even guaranteeing they're working properly. So we're going to keep a close eye on that.
And can you explain then also, there's a reason why we want to take them out. They are tied to what harmful effects, possibly cancer, or
they are carcinogens. They're carcinogens, so yes, they're tied in with birth defects. So the places that they're seeing this, they're seeing them in. They use the biosolids for fertilizer. Fertilizer gets put down that has the PFAS and PFOS in it, gets into the grains that feed the cows. Cows eat the grains, produce the milk, then it shows up in the milk supply, which then transfers into the human chain. So that's where they're coming from. And again, we're just now starting to really understand what these are and what they're doing. So again, expect more to come on this.
May I ask a question? So when you say it's in the firefighters foam, was that an older product? Is it still in this foam, or have they now gotten rid of those products that could create this?
I wish I could answer the question. I don't know off the top of my head. I would be happy to find out for you.
LaNae, I do know that they do make foam that does not have it. Whether or not all of that's been regulated to the point where it's no longer permitted or allowed, I can't answer that either. But I do know that the foam that we use, as I've reported this to Chief Gurney when he was our fire chief, we made him aware of that, and they looked into it and confirmed that it did not have that in the foam that they use here.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Jumping back into this, task 6 is we're going to take a look at our power supply system and distribution system for the facility. Every piece of equipment that we have down here that moves water, pumps water, treats water, runs on electricity. So if we don't have a good, solid power distribution system, we can't treat the water. And then the last task is actually developing the capital improvement plan. Part of that plan is looking at our assets. Currently, we have 879 assets under review. as we start looking at these things, we are looking at the date installed, the age of the equipment, how much do we utilize it? How much is it used? We put in a base life based on industry standards. We put in an actual life based on when the equipment was installed and how much we use it. We look at condition and we rate on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being brand new, 5 being we need to replace it today. And then we have some risk of failures. We have 5 criteria that we look at there. We look at safety, we look at meeting permit, redundancy, flexibility of operation, and what happens to operations if that piece of equipment fails. We take an average risk of that and plug it into this spreadsheet. It will calculate the remaining life and kick out a replacement year. And again, if you look at the spreadsheet that's before you, you can see some of these numbers are showing up red. These are the things that we need to take a closer look at to see if they are really going to be causing us a problem, or can we do some maintenance and extend the life? A lot of the equipment that we put in out here, we do a lot of maintenance and we can extend the life. This doesn't show it. We have a couple of pumps that we have on a 10-year rebuilding schedule. We don't have to replace the pump. We can do a rebuild on the pump. And the pumps we're talking about to do a rebuild is around $50,000 a pump. To purchase one is $200,000. So again, by doing the proper maintenance on these, we extend the life. And the spreadsheet takes all of this into account when they provide their recommendation. And as a side note, this year, EPA has come back and said that they are going to reinitialize the Clean Water Needs Survey. This is something that treatment plants usually have to do about every 5 years. It's in conjunction with the municipal wastewater planning program, which the city council will see next month. The facility has to submit that annually. This will be another part of that, and that's due actually in December of this year. So this is going to feed directly into that. This is also required for House Bill 269. It was just put into place this past legislative season. So again, this is the framework if we want to go after any state or federal dollars to help pay for some of our projects. So we're ahead of the curve on doing these things to meet some of these requirements.
If I could take a minute here on this as well, if you could, maybe a good comparison for this would be maintaining your vehicle. You buy a vehicle, it's nice and shiny, it costs you tens of thousands of dollars these days. And then you think, okay, great, I have my new vehicle, I don't have to worry. Well, actually, when you buy it, that's when the worrying needs to start, because you need to plan ahead for the future for things that are going to fail. Anything that is man-made will fail at some point. And you do need to maintain these man-made pieces of equipment and parts and pieces on a vehicle. For example, Thayne, we have Thayne here as our fleet manager. On a comparison, if you were to compare the plant and liken it to your own vehicle, you have maybe a rear view mirror, then you have the brake system, you have the drive system, you have a transmission, you have the spark plugs, you have wiper fluid, you got radiators and radiator fluid and so forth. Well, if your water fluid container is low, the risk of failure for that is relatively low. If your oil is low in your engine, your risk of failure, your consequence of failure for your vehicle operating into the future is quite high. And so we need to look at every single part here and moving piece and pump systems and filtration systems and so forth. Not only do we need to look at each one to see when does it need to be replaced, but in terms of prioritization, we have to look at the consequence of failure. And if the failure means that we are not going to be able to maintain the permit through water quality, that's a significant blow to our system, the ability to obtain funds and to get a really bad public public black eye, I would suggest. There are other components that have to do with the health and sanitation. We obviously, in this process, in this system, we need to make sure that the health and sanitation is of highest regard. So we need to be very effective in reviewing that. And so I think what Giles has identified is an excellent list of all of the assets that are down there. How many pumps do we have at our facility, Giles? Was it like around 100 or so?
It was at the facility alone is 62.
Okay, but in our entire system, I think we have more than 100.
100 pumps.
100 pumps. So we have to make sure that each one of those is maintained like a separate vehicle almost. If you can imagine, we have to go out all the time and inspect and maintain and ensure that everything is running and functioning properly. But a pump is likened to a heart, right? So we only have one heart in our bodies. We have over 100 in the body of the water reclamation facility in the system that we maintain. So it's quite an effort to be able to identify all of these and then to maintain these, and then eventually to repair and to replace them in the future.
Also, going along the lines of Chris was just saying, again, if your car fails, you have the option of walking. You can ride a bike. You could take a bus. Orem only has one water reclamation facility. We operate 24/7, 365 days a year. This facility never shuts down. We always have flow coming to us. So we're very concerned about our equipment. We're very concerned about doing the proper maintenance to make sure that the service to our customers is never interrupted. And this is part of it. The engineer to date has completed the 3 memos that are before you. We have done our flows and loads study. We have done our hydraulic capacity study, and we have done our treatment process evaluations. There are good things that are in these memos, and there's some things that we have some concerns over. Again, we will be presenting this to Public Works Management probably middle of July. These tech memos are available now if anybody is interested in reading them. There's some really good information in here on what this facility can and cannot do.
Where would we access those, Giles?
Right now, they are sitting on our servers. If Chris is inclined, we can make those available through a Google Drive.
Yeah, we can share that with the commission, I think.
That sounds fantastic.
One of the things that we asked to be done during this process is updating our hydraulic profile. This is the document that we live and die by out here. This tells us when a process unit could be flooded. If we take a process unit out, do we have capacity to move it through the remaining units? And again, we have found some bottlenecks out here that we're going to have to address. But this is now survey grade and it's accurate. So we have a really good roadmap moving forward.
In the water business, including water reclamation, of course, in case you can attest to this, the hydraulic profile of your system is important when making any major upgrades or decisions regarding how to deliver sustainable water supply. In this case, how to process the wastewater as effectively and efficiently as we can. So it's a guiding document that we would refer to regularly.
As of right now, we still have 4 more tasks that we have underway. Task 4, which is our odor control evaluation. I had a meeting with the engineer yesterday afternoon. That tech memo is going to be sent to us in draft form first or second week of May, as is task 5, which is the biosolids study. Task 6, which is our power system. That one I'm expecting to come in the end of May. And then the actual plan itself, that one will come in for review for city staff first week of June. Again, we're looking at completing this about mid-July with presentations to management at that time frame.
And Giles, are they looking at your Scada system as well? I didn't ever see a task for that.
That's part of the electrical and distribution systems.
Okay.
So yes, we are looking at Scada systems. In fact, we have a project underway right now where we are completely redoing the Scada HMI portion of that to make sure we're compliant with all of the new recommendations from federal government on cybersecurity.
Thank you.
You bet. You can see from the pictures there.
Giles,
Yes.
yeah, can you comment on Scada and let everyone know what that means? Not the acronym itself, but why is Scada important for a water system?
The Scada system for us is our eyes and ears of the process. It is monitoring all of our treatment trains, equipment. It's providing data back to our operators so that we can see what the system is doing in real time. It controls how our pumps operate. It controls how our aeration blowers operate. It's the brains that actually runs the treatment plant. Without it, it's difficult to run. We always build in redundancy to these systems that if our Scada system drops, we can run the system manually. So we have backup, but this lets us fine tune and get the best process out of the system that we can.
So it's kind of like the human nervous system, right?
It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Giles, could you comment on what the potential impact would be from a cybersecurity standpoint if someone with unauthorized access got into your Scada system? What would be the worst thing they could do?
If we detected someone coming into our system, we will turn off all of the PLCs and we will run the plant manually. That is our contingency right now. If somebody were to get in and we were to have a ransomware or they would lock up our systems, we will just turn everything off and go to manual operation.
But if you didn't detect it, what could they do?
Most of our electrical gear is not connected to the Scada system, so they cannot get into the electrical systems. The worst that they could do is turn off our blowers and turn off our pumps. If we turn those off, we would have water that would flood the facility, or we would lose the treatment on the aeration system. Again, if our main pumps aren't running, we can't move water through the facility, so no water going out. We'll still have water coming in, but no water going out.
Thank you, Giles.
You bet. And again, just so everybody's aware, all of the systems down here are fully redundant. Our power system, we have two large backup generators. So if we lose the power grid, we can run the entire system with our generators. We have an 8,000-gallon diesel storage tank for our generators, which gives us enough to run for a solid week on both generators. All of the systems, again, can be run in manual if we had to. And our operators are fully versed on how to do this. So we are prepared if we have an emergency. You can see from this, again, there's some pictures there. We do have some concerns out here. The pipe there on the left-hand side, we found that one 3 weeks ago. That pipe was put in 1983. It's a steel pipe. It's subject to corrosion, and it corroded from the inside out. So there are some things that we need to look at. The center picture, that's a PLC cabinet. It's time to replace them. They've served their life. They've been in there for 12 to 15 years, which is the lifespan of one of these. It's time to replace them. In going through this CIP evaluation, there are some things that we have identified that are immediate needs for the treatment plant. The first one is our aeration system. The photo that's on the right-hand side there shows the fine bubble diffusers in one of our bioreactors, one of our big tanks. If you look closely on the right-hand side, you can see one row of diffusers that's turned at a funny angle. That actually broke 2 weeks ago. In order to fix that, we have to drain that tank, clean it out, and climb down in there and put it back together. That tank holds 3.8 million gallons of water. One of the tricks to operating these facilities is stability. When the process is stable, they run very, very well. When you have an upset like this, where you have to go in and drain a tank and move the water around, it really starts to hinder how well you can operate your facility. So we need to replace this system. There's 3 tanks. There's aeration systems in all 3 tanks. So we're looking at $750,000 to replace that system. This tank also has surface aerators. The MCCs and VFDs are at end of life. I can't run these up to capacity right now because they're old and they won't take the load. So we need to replace those. Casey, talking with you, PLCs. We have 12 PLC installations out here. They're at end of life. They need to be replaced. So we're looking at that. We also have a fiber optic system that needs to be upgraded to meet the new standards for cybersecurity and separating business networks from SCADA networks. So that's another one that we're going to be looking at very closely right now. Any questions on those? Next project, tertiary reuse. This is a project that would provide type 1 reuse water to Orem City. We looked at this. We've been working on this now for a number of years. And people ask, well, why reuse? Well, if you look at the map here, down on the left-hand side to the east of Orem, we have 2 large water users. One is the Lakeside Sports Park, and the other is the Sleepy Ridge Golf Course. If you're not aware, Orem gets a lot of its culinary water from the east side of Orem, up near Provo Canyon and the treatment plant that sits up there. To get that water all the way down to Sleepy Ridge Golf Course requires a lot of pipes. It's expensive. So when we looked at this, the cost of putting in reuse was less than putting in the infrastructure to move the water from the east side of Orem to the west side of Orem. Well, we also thought most reuse systems sit idle for 6 months out of the year because we can't irrigate here in Utah. So we thought, well, let's put in a dual purpose system. We set up a system that will also allow us to do phosphorus removal with these filters. So this system will run 12 months out of the year. In putting this in, it will help equalize some of the pressure issues that we have through Orem by offloading the big peak demands of the sports park and the golf course. And again, if we use reuse water for irrigation, we're conserving potable water for the residents of Orem. This is the demand for reuse that we have right now. You can see that we have 3 areas where we're going to be using irrigation water. The Lakeside Sports Park, that will take 800 gallons a minute. Sleepy Ridge Golf Course, that's the big one. They take up to 2,100 gallons a minute. And then Springwater Park, which is directly north of the treatment facility, takes 250 gallons a minute for a total of about 3,200 gallons a minute, or just under 5 million gallons a day. The other thing that we are going to be doing is we want to irrigate the treatment plant with reuse water. So the treatment plant will take another 500 gallons a minute, or another, almost an MGD for process water and irrigation. The difference here is our irrigation for the golf course and sports parks, that's at night. the irrigation for the treatment plant process, that's during the day. So we kind of offset each other. The facility has a really interesting flow pattern. Around 1 a.m., we're only flowing at about 3.5 million, or 3.5 MGD. At noon, we're up to 12 to 13 MGD. So we have to put in a little bit of storage to help meet these demands. And by the treatment plant irrigating during the daytime, we conserve that water for our other users during the night.
Giles, LaNae had a question.
Please.
So, Springwater Park, is that just normal watering? Why that's on that list? I saw it wasn't very significant of an amount, but is that because it's near that area so you can easily water that park?
Yes, that's exactly why.
Okay. There's nothing else going on there other than it's a park, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
just, it's a real, short hop to get water to them, and we can pull that system off the culinary.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Is there any concern to using that water versus potable in the park? Obviously, you don't want kids drinking straight from the sprinklers, but is there any other downstream effect from using that water there?
No. Type 1 water reuse is specifically designed for this. There are some things that we do have to do at all of these areas. The water can't spray on picnic areas.
I see.
So we have to go in and we have to modify the sprinkler heads to make sure that they're not watering picnic areas. We have to put up signage that please don't drink the water. So this type of water is used extensively in Arizona. That's all they use for their golf courses. Works very well. The other thing that a lot of people like about this water, it has phosphorus in it. Phosphorus is a fertilizer for the grass. So you get free fertilizer with it. So it's a really good high quality source of irrigation water.
So I'd like to add to that. This is type 1 water reuse, which is the highest water quality standard for reuse water. The next level of treatment, you could actually take this water and treat it to be able to be delivered into the tap of every home in the city as well. That's not something that we're looking at currently, although it is certainly a topic of discussion going from toilet to tap, not from tap to toilet. So just the thought of it doesn't sound right, but there are treatment processes that are currently being used for that today. That is not what this project is. This is just to be able to land apply it, and we have to treat it to a type 1 level, which means that you can have human contact, but you can't drink it.
Thank you.
Some of the project benefits to Orem, you will have consistent water pressure throughout. We can maintain proper fire flows during the irrigation system. Again, like I mentioned earlier, the treatment plant has a phosphorus limit right now of 2.5 milligrams per liter. That's changing July 1 or January 1 of 2023. So in 6 months, 7 months, it's going to drop to 1 milligram per liter. This facility has the capability of removing phosphorus. We purposely designed it that way. So again, we get better utilization of this system. It's not sitting idle for 6 months out of the year. We will use it continuously once it's up and running to help meet our phosphorus limit. One of the other nice things is when we're doing irrigation, we get credit for the phosphorus that is land applied versus reaching the legs. So it helps us in the phosphorus limit that the facility would have. Currently, we have pipelines in the ground for this. The orange line is actually in the ground, ready to go. If you look up to the top of that, to the north end of that, we have that purple line. That's another line that needs to be installed. That will take the reuse water up to the sports park. The orange line, again, is already in the ground, ready to go to work. We did the design on this project. We bid it right after the first of the year. We pre-qualified contractors, so we knew who we would be getting. We had 4 contractors that pre-qualified, 3 contractors submitted bids. You can see by the amounts down there, Archer Western was low bid at $18.6 million, and it went up from there. Engineer's cost estimate, $9.5 to $10 million. So we have some issues here. We don't currently have the funds to do the project. Again, the numbers that we're seeing are not surprising in the bidding climate we're in right now. I'm seeing multiple projects in wastewater that are coming in 70, 75, 80, 100% above engineers' estimates. And again, when you talk with the contractors and ask them, their response is, we're putting in contingencies of 25, 30, 35% on these projects because there's so many unknowns right now. Supply chain issues, all of these are factoring into this. So again, the projects are expensive right now, and I'm not sure when this is going to settle down. I hope it does, but this is the climate we're in right now.
Can I just ask a question? So looking at this bid, I'm just kind of surprised that those first 3 item numbers, the companies are so different. You know, you got 350,000 versus a 50 and 75, or a 950 versus a 2.9 and a 2.5. Is that pretty common, or what is the unknowns about those different items that some people are pounding the bid there and others aren't?
So when I'm looking at, for instance, demo, Jalen Roberts is currently working at our site. They have a very good understanding of what our site is. They know what to expect. Archer Western has never worked down here, so that's probably a justification of demo. When I look at mobilization, demobilization, that one's a little bit hard to explain. That one is, how much equipment do I have to bring in and out each time I need to do something? A bigger company is going to have access to more equipment that can just sit on site. A smaller company is going to be moving equipment around quite a bit, so they're going to have additional costs.
Just a couple of comments, Giles, on that. Mob, demob typically is a catch-all for everything that doesn't easily fit in the other line items. And so I wouldn't look at mob, demob too hard, because that just catches everything that contractors think is necessary but not listed on the line item. One other comment is that I think Orem is able to do CMGC, and this might be an opportunity to sit down with the contractor and find out what they think are the risks and see how they can mitigate. We frequently do this, and sometimes owner furnished equipment resolves the risk. Sometimes allowances does that, but to have an engineer's cost estimate nearly half the cost of the bid, that's really unusual. That's really unusual.
Yeah, our next step right now, that's a great point, Casey. With CMGC, you need to bring on the contractor at about 30% of the design, probably is when that normally happens, and this is completely designed. We would probably, what we'd like to do right now is do some value engineering,
Right.
and meet with them to talk about, well, what do you identify as the greatest risks here? What are the unknowns that we can help you answer? And so we are in the process of engaging with Archer Western, for example, on that to value engineer. And we have to work with our procurement officer, Trevor, as well on that. But that is our next step to move forward. We were extremely alarmed by this, to the point where we've, as we've said metaphorically here, we're hitting the pause button on all of our major water and water reclamation projects until we can get a handle on some of these inflationary forces that have been occurring. they've been saying, there's a supply chain issue. There's also labor shortages. You have people coming on board where they're skipping for $1 an hour and going somewhere else. So they can't guarantee schedules and things along those lines. The bottom line is I think the city needs to be open to accepting more risk up front that will drive the cost down, most likely. But in the event there is something that is out of control, that we take and absorb that risk, that could help drive these costs down.
And it's CMGC more is identification and mitigation of risks so that contractors understand who's responsible for what. But our costs, we've seen in the past 3 months nearly a 20% increase in our bids, and it's because you can't get pipe. Pipe is just really hard to get on a timely schedule, and so that's sometimes if you're able to pre-order pipe and then deliver that to the contractor, that reduces their risk quite a bit. But yeah, I think your only option here is to go back and do some value engineering and get a contractor on board and see if you can't identify and mitigate the risks.
Can I just ask one more, stupid question, I guess? I look at this site excavation and, there's a big difference there. Do those other two, does Archer Western understand our Orem potatoes, the rocks that we have here? Are they going to be in trouble when they start this because they're so much lower? I don't know. Help me understand why that's different too, if you know.
I can't answer that. I don't know why there's such a discrepancy in there. I know the one that I would probably trust on that one is Jalen Roberts, because they just dug a hole 50 yards from this site and they know exactly what they're getting into.
We don't have to worry about this. They can't come back and say our expenses were so much higher in site excavation. We're going to have to, once the bid contract is signed, they're stuck, right? I mean, they have to do it for that amount. Or do we?
Unless there is a substantial change in site conditions, they have to do it for the price they've set. Again, we provided them with geotechnical reports. We did site borings, so we know what's here. Again, they may be better at digging. I don't know. That's a big discrepancy. It's what, $1.5 to $2 million discrepancy there between the three contractors.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You bet. Any other questions on this? If not, we'll jump to the next slide.
Let's see here. Okay, yeah. So I'll bring it home at this point. So you might ask, well, what can we do? Well, there's a $9 million shortfall. I think our first line of defense here is to do the value engineering like has been suggested. And that's what our plan is right now, to meet with Archer Western. Just to give you an idea of what we have done since this, we went after about $2.5 to $3 million of the $50 million of available ARPA grants that were managed through the state of Utah Division of Drinking Water. We were not selected as a part of that. In fact, there was about 100 projects that competed for the $50 million, and the total number of requests added up to about $1 billion in requests for the $50 million of available funds. We did receive a communication from the Director of Water Quality, Erica Gaddis, who said after that review that our project looked very good, and they looked upon it very favorably. And they said to try to go after additional dollars that might be available in the future. There is a $50 million pot of money and now available of ARPA grant money that's now available through Utah County. We did put in our application last Friday of last week. We did get letters of support from Linden City, Utah Lake Commission, and also the Division of Drinking Water, which I was a little bit surprised that they would do that for us, but they did offer a very favorable letter of support. We have met with Commissioner Bill Lee, who was going to be involved with the selection process, and we also will be meeting with the other two Utah County commissioners. Let's go to the next one really quick here. We're also going after federal dollars to help fill in the gap. This was in our, I'm not going to read through this here, but I'm highlighting these comments here. Let's skip to the next page. In this Utah County Water Project Award Program, Giles, if you can go to the next page. Those items that were highlighted, I put in on this slide here. But I think this speaks very highly to what we're doing for the environment and the effects that this could have on regional economic and recreational benefits in addition to water quality on Utah Lake. Putting this into perspective, we'll be able to treat over 1,000 acre-feet of water annually for irrigation purposes. What that equates to is about drinking water, an equivalent drinking water for about 1,200 households, or about 4,200 people a year. We have a right to do up to 9,600 acre-feet of reuse water through the state engineer's office. That's been permitted. So you multiply that by 10. That's the potential for what could happen here. We're at the very beginning and cusp of something very big, I believe. We've talked to Casey Shaw and Central Utah Water about others that might have an interest in reuse water, including Rocky Mountain Power's cooling waters demands at their facility in Vineyard. If they were to take some of this water, we would work with Casey in Central Utah and doing an exchange where they could, I believe, pump water out on their site and use that for cooling water. It would be a more efficient use of water overall, and it would have a greater positive effect on the environment in this region. Utah Lake has been in the paper, been in the news for the last few years regarding harmful algal blooms. This is going to put a dent in that. If all of the facilities around the lake, publicly owned treatment works, were to do something to this degree or level of phosphorus removal, it would have a net positive effect on the lake and overall health and quality of the water in the lake itself. So we do believe that this is a very good project. It's going to look very highly, I think, on that review committee is going to look on this very highly. I believe it's a shovel-ready project that'll take about 9 months, and we hope to have this underway in the near future as soon as we get the head nod from Utah County or others that might be able to help participate in funding this. And that's all we have, I think. There's nothing else in this slide. Any questions regarding water reuse, tertiary water, and so forth, and what we're trying to accomplish there?
I just want to compliment Giles for his excellent work on condition assessment and capital improvement planning of the treatment plant. That's a great piece of work, Giles, and I really appreciate your effort there and support what you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we need to conclude. I do want to mention that we would like to have a tour of our water reclamation facility, probably our next opportunity, so we can probably put in your mind exactly what we're looking at trying to accomplish, and putting a name with a face of sorts at the facility, so we can look at dewatering, we can look at the bioreactors or the presses or whatever it might be, and it will help you to kind of understand what we're looking at, the magnitude and scope of what's involved here. So we're going to be scheduling that for our next meeting. We hope to have a couple new members on our commission as well. I'll be working with Ms. Millet on that. And I'll turn the time back over to Devin Riches, who is the commission chair.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. And thank you for that presentation. Also, thank you, Giles. That was great. I believe the only other business that we need to conduct is the approval of our previous minutes, and that is the September 14th. Do we have any other PWAC members present besides Jim and Casey and myself? I only see us three.
That is it.
Okay, so for us three, do we have anyone that is willing to motion that we approve those minutes?
Do we have a quorum? Is that sufficient? Is 3 of the 7 okay?
I believe 3 is, isn't it the active members? Is that right?
That's correct.
So 3 counts as quorum.
I move they be approved, Devin.
All right, I second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, with all 3 of us voting aye, those are approved then. And I think that we are done, so I motion that we conclude this meeting.
Have we set a date for the next meeting?
We have not.
You want to wait on that, Chris, so that you can get a tour scheduled and new commission members approved?
We'd like to do it as soon as we have the commission members in place. And so it could be 4 weeks from now, or it may be 8 weeks, one of the two. We'd like to bring up 3 names to the council for approval, and we're working on that currently. So it might be June.
4 or 8 would work great for me, Chris.
Okay.
As long as we keep it early in the morning, I think we can avoid most conflicts.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you. We will send an email out as soon as we can regarding that and make you aware of when the new committee members have been appointed.
And we just recognize Reed. Congratulations, Reed, on your new responsibility. Look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Casey. Looking forward to it myself.
You bet.
Very exciting.
And
Okay,
thank-
well, I think we can adjourn then.
Great
Okay,
presentation.
thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. LaNae?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. LaNae, I'd like to give you a call, and then we can talk a little bit about the commission members and then also any other thing that you want to talk about regarding traffic calming.
Sounds great. Give me a call right now.
So Kate, I didn't mention, but Cody was on our call right here, and he was the one that was in charge of removing those bulb outs. So those are all done, as you know.
So I got a photo texted to me like right when it was happening, and the neighbors were so happy. I can't tell you. They reached
Yeah.
out.
Chris, was that on Palisade?
Palisade
One
and
I-
all.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Hillcrest was the one too.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
down at 5th East, between 8 South and 1100 South, there were some down there that were removed.
So hooray, the chokers we're done dealing with the chokers. I got so many emails on that. That was just interesting. But thanks for your work on that. That was great.
You bet. I'll give you a call.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.